because Easter is a blank screen on which people project their desires, and Easter, who cannot hear or speak, fulfills them. He is a little Sherpa. He is the tiny servant. And everyone in the book responds very strongly to this child. They love their tiny servant who asks nothing of them. And yet readers felt the same way. This is the perfect child. I mean,
That's right. You're saying what we all long for is
I
a deaf
designed
mute
a
child.
perfect child that does not speak and lives to serve, and everyone says, Easter, Easter. So I have this great close friend who I adore in Colorado, Annie Denver. Annie Denver was the widow of John Denver, and she's Annie's song, and everything in that song, that is what that woman is. She is astonishing. And so this was maybe a year or two after that book had come out, and Annie and I were having dinner, and she was like, Anne, I love State of Wonder. It's just fabulous. Easter, I love Easter.
Yeah.
Easter's your dog, isn't he? And I was like, oh my God, Annie, how did you know that? No one, no one got that. And she was like, it's so clear, it's little Rose, just living to serve you and not ever saying anything. I loved Easter. He's the little dog. Yes, Annie. Yes. There you go.
Yeah, well.
It doesn't make you like me anymore.
I do think a little less of you. That's a wonderful story. We have some wonderful teachers in the room tonight, and like most writers, we've had some teachers in our lives.
Yeah.
You studied writing with Alan Gerganis and with Grace Paley. But I thought you might like to talk a little bit about them, but I suspect you might also like to say a few words about Sister Nina.
Yeah. Well, which way would you like me to go?
Whichever or both.
The three fairies that came and stood beside my bassinet when I was born were Alan Gerganis and Grace Paley and Russell Banks. And when I was at Sarah Lawrence as an undergraduate, I studied with each of them for a year in a class of 12 or 14 people and met with them once a week. And the joke was they went to the cafeteria and cut your meat up for you. And they all three gave me a great gift. Alan gave me the gift of work and the idea that if you want to write, you just write. You just write and write and write and forget about inspiration and, just write it, throw it out, write it, throw it out. Pile up a huge number of pages, and that's how you find yourself. Preciousness has no place in anything. It is like playing the cello. You just do it and do it and do it. Grace Paley gave me, really and truly, these were like the three gifts. Grace gave me the gift of a single voice and the idea that who you are as a writer, as an activist, as a spouse, as a friend, as a community member, is the same person. You don't compartmentalize your life. You can't be a bad person and a good writer. Maybe other people can, but
I was going to say, we could all think of a couple examples.
Yeah, we can think of plenty of them. But what Grace was saying
was that you can't.
It's not allowed. In this world in which I am bringing you up, it is not allowed.
Right.
People ask all the time, can writing be taught? And I always say, I can teach you to write a better sentence. I can teach you to write a setting. I can sure teach you how to write better dialogue. But I cannot teach you how to be a better person. I cannot teach you how to have a moral character. I cannot teach you how to have something to say. And that's what Grace taught us.
Or the hunger, the need to say it.
That's that's what Grace said. I could care less about your sentences and your characters and your dialogue and your plot. I am here to teach you how to be a better person.
That's pretty amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Have you ever run across that again?
Never. Nor have I ever heard anybody who ran across it.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And really was always canceling classes and saying, we have to go to the, Marine Recruitment Center downtown to march all night shouting USA, CIA out of Grenada. And we did, and that was her lesson. You have to be a moral person. Just work on that. If you happen to write, that's great.
Yeah.
And then Russell Banks, does Russell have a place in Maine? Is Russell New Hampshire or is Russell?
He's upstate, and last I heard, which was a couple years ago, he's upstate New York near Lake Placid, right?
I'll come with Russell. Russell and I will come together.
He's now in Florida, and so he's like people in Nashville.
Yeah, we're hard to get. Once you go south, we drop. But so Russell, I had a conference with Russell one day, and Russell said, listen, you're really good. You're better than anybody else in the class. Nobody's ever going to give you any criticism on your story. He said, but you're facile, and you're slick, and you're superficial. And you have to ask yourself if you want to write great literature or if you want to write great television. And everything
that must have been
in
welcome
my
news,
life changed because I wanted to write great literature. And he said, the only person who can make you better is you. And if you want to push yourself, if you want to rely on the funny joke and stay on the surface, you can do that. That's beautiful. If you want to be better, you push yourself to be better. No one will do it for you. And I walked out of that office a different person. And it was that beautiful moment, when you're young and the right person says the right thing at the right time and you can hear it and everything can change.
So let's hear it for teachers, huh?
Yeah, let's hear it for teachers. Yeah.
And you have to tell us about Sister Nina, because there's an essay in Anne's most recent book, not novel, but book. This is the story of a happy marriage, which I cannot recommend to you highly enough. They're just stunning, wonderful essays. And the last one in it is called
The Mercies.
The Mercies, about this nun, Sister Nina. I don't want to step on it. Tell us about Sister Nina.
Sister Nina's fine. Just talk to her. She was my reading teacher. I used to say she was my English teacher. She said, no, I was your reading teacher in first grade through third grade in Nashville. And I hated her. She was my bad nun story. Anybody who went to Catholic school, and I went for there, you're nodding, yeah. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. Everybody's got the terrible nun story. Sister Nina was so mean to me. She kept me in from recess every day. Flashcards forever. She was always making me redo things. It made me feel like an idiot. I was never going to be anything. I was never going to be any good. And I went on my whole life to complain about Sister Nina. I believe that revenge is one of the best motivating forces for writing. Yeah. And I had a great sense of revenge, and it was largely directed to Sister Nina. I'm going to show you one day, old woman, you're gonna pick up one of my books and you're gonna wish you'd been nicer to me. One day your biggest claim to fame is gonna be that you taught me anyway, this was when I was in my 20s. I was still carrying the great burden of my anger for this nun. Well, what happened was my parents got divorced. We moved to Nashville from Los Angeles the week before I turned 6, and I was in first grade, and it was 1969. And we showed up at Sister Nina's classroom, but we didn't show up very often because we moved around a lot and we lived with a lot of different people. And frankly, my mother just didn't make us go to school. And we slept in and we were snuggly and cute, and she went to work and we went home. I don't know what the hell was going on. We just didn't go to school. And so I didn't learn how to read. And the next year we moved away for half a year. Then I came back to Sister Nina's classroom. I still didn't know how to read. And then we moved away for another half a year. And in third grade, I came back to Sister Nina's classroom. And I still didn't know how to read. And she made me feel really bad about it by keeping me in from recess and trying to teach me how to read. And so what happened was when I was probably 38, 39, she called me one day, and she said she needed money. She was volunteering at a St. Vincent de Paul school, and they didn't have scissors, and they didn't have glue sticks, and they didn't have anything. And she said, I've been following your career, and I know you have money. Can you, can I have some? I said, well, absolutely, because you just saved me 20 years of therapy, and that probably would have been really expensive. To have the person who is your symbol of all that went wrong ask you for a favor, and you can, with benevolent kindness, grant them their favor. So I sent her a check, and then, of course, she spent the money, and a few months later, she called me again. They were out of glue sticks. And I said, let's get together. Let's go out. And I went to pick her up, and she was standing. She lived in a condo with 2 other nuns, Sister Helen and Sister Melanie, who were the math teacher and the principal when I was a kid. And she was standing outside, and I got out of the car, and she was like this. She's a little tiny woman. She's like 5 feet tall, and she weighs 85 pounds. So that's not a joke. And she was like, hey, she loved me. You know what? She loved me. And I was wrong. I passed judgment on this woman when I was 6 years old. And I held on to it until I was 38. And I was wrong. And she had been trying. You know, it would be like Helen Keller saying, you know, Annie Sullivan messed up my hair. Yeah. She got my dress all wet with that water thing. Yeah. She saved me. She was the adult who loved me. Yeah. And in return, I love her very much. And we are like best friends now. And we look after one another. And it's an amazing thing because she was in the order of the Sisters of Mercy, which are like the Daughters of Charity. And they were a very progressive, they were what we call the tracksuit nuns. You know, they didn't wear habits, they just wore tracksuits. And Mercy, nobody wants to be a Mercy now. You know, if you were a progressive woman who wanted to be a nun, you're not a nun. You're just helpful in the church, right? Yeah. If you're a woman who wants to be a nun now, you become a Poor Clare. You become a cloistered nun, or you become a Dominican wearing a burqa. Right. You know, there is no modern nun. Right. So with the Mercies, there are 8 of them in Nashville who haven't been, as we say, sent out to Mercy, which is the old nuns' home, which is the end of the line. And they're just living in little outposts, living in fear of the day that they're going to be sent out to Mercy. Yeah. And so I take care of my nuns. They took care of me. Yeah. It's really good to have your own nun. I mean, it works. I don't know how I feel about God. I don't know how I feel about Catholicism. But I know how I feel about the Mercies. And everything I love about God and Catholicism, 2 things I'm very murky on, are contained in these women who spend their days visiting the poor and going to hospitals to visit the sick and teaching children how to read and living with a vow of poverty and obedience, and they are the happiest, most cheerful, giving embodiment of what we wish religion was. Yeah. They are brilliant, and the world will be such a poor place when they're gone.
I loved what Sister Nina said towards the end of that essay. I'm not going to get it right, but I remember her saying something along the lines of it was kind of her own credo. She was saying, I know God made us. After that, I'm a little murky. Yeah. Something like that. Something like that, which just struck me as the most wonderful statement of both faith and doubt combined in the same sentence.
She's afraid to die.
Yeah.
She's not sure. She's sure of God, she's sure of where she comes from, but she's not, the whole heaven thing, she's not so sure about. Yeah. I got to tell you a great Nina story.
Okay.
So the Mercies hate the Dominicans.
Yeah.
And the Dominicans don't even deign to hate the Mercies. They just don't think the Mercies are nuns. And I was saying to her one day, this is insane. There are very few of you. you need to pull together.
Right.
You know, you've got to pool your resources. You can't just dislike each other. And she said, I will not. The Dominicans are in charge of a girls' school named St. Cecilia. The Mercies had St. Bernard's. I said, what's wrong with them? What is wrong with them? She said, they lie to those girls. I will not forgive them. They lie to those girls. What do they lie to those girls about?
Yeah.
They tell them they can't have sex before they get married. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were all down with that one. And she looked at me and she said, Anne, get real. So that's the best way to explain what it is to be a Mercy.
You're trying to pull me back into the church, aren't you?
I'll tell you, if they were the church,
yeah.
I am back in the church.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful thing that we go to twice a year. They have this service. It's like service of redemption. It's like all the confession you never went to. Mm-hmm. And it's at night, and there are like 6 priests there, and it's just, it covers everything.
Yeah.
It's just one-stop
just a blanket.
shopping.
Yeah.
And you go up to the priest. Oh, this is just killer. You go up to the priests, and you all line up like you're taking communion, and they put their arms around you and put their foreheads down on yours, and they say, I forgive you, I love you, and I forgive you for your sins, and God loves you, and he forgives you for your sins. And then at the end, they all forgive one another, the priests.
Oh. Barbara, we could do that, couldn't we?
No, I know. There's this whole brand. This is like this little tiny cult.
Yeah.
And you know, she calls our Pope, Francis, she calls him the first Catholic Pope.
Okay. Great.
Killer. So, you know, when people ask me if I'm Catholic, I'm like, yeah, let me show you the source. Let me show you the mothership. I got the mothership.
When we were on the radio yesterday, you were talking about
email.
Well, no, we were talking about that too. We'll probably get back to that. But we were talking about one of the things that all of your novels at least have in common is certainly in Bel Canto, your breakout book, is kind of representative of what happens in an Ann Patchett novel. Mm-hmm. Is that a group of strangers get together typically in a foreign place like the Amazon,
or in Nebraska, which is very foreign,
and form a family, a society, a community. But since so many of these are set in places that are going to be foreign to the reader, and probably were foreign to you at some point, although it's interesting to know why you went down to the Amazon for State of Wonder. It does put a premium on research, doesn't it? When you're writing a book that's likely going to be in a new place. As I was saying, I scratch around in the same patch of dirt all the time, but you really do go to new places all the time, which makes me wonder about what you think about. I mean, obviously, you think of revenge as a very good writer's tool, but what about curiosity? What do you think of yourself as a really curious person? Are you